Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Ears to the East. Truly a channel of genius level waffle. Or there's just a lot of words that happen, and hopefully they're entertaining. So today we're having a little chat because obviously not so long ago, Band-Maid announced that they're having their best of album come out. It's a two-parter. But I think it was interesting. Like Volume 1 really is the sort of the tracks that I think are the most popular ones. Then Volume 2 really was seems to be a collection of, if you like, fan favorites. So in other words, Volume 1 will drag in those new fans, and then Volume 2 will hopefully get them fully into the addicted mode. But they brought out the cover artwork, I think it was yesterday or today, and yeah, it's really cool and everything. And we were just thinking, best of albums. Do we know any good ones? Because we're used to like listening to bands, but best of's a really good way of getting you into a band who've maybe been around for a while and sort of catching you up with them. So thoughts on the best of album, maybe as a concept, and any good ones you know of, Neil?
I personally like the best of. I think I always think they're a good idea, especially if you don't know a band too well and you want to hear some of their like main hits and all that. I always feel it's kind of a weird one a little bit, because I always feel like there's always going to be songs that you're going to personally love that aren't going to make it on the best ofs. But as a segue into falling into a band and kind of like knowing what they're all about, yeah, I think best ofs are all right, to be honest with you.
I think that's very much what was going on with Band-Maid's one as well, because they've been touring in the US. And when I saw them the other day, I was mentioning just how so many people outside the show, just like there was a lot of seemingly new fans because they'd grown so much. You had the old school fans who've been there for so long. But even when I was talking to fans after the show, like, oh, you're a massive Band-Maid fan. You got all the merch. Hey, when did you get into them? It was like 2021. I'm like, really? In the middle of COVID? I'm thinking, well, am I starting to become one of the old school fans? I still consider myself as a fresh-faced newbie, even though I've got like the poster and the hat and the extra merch. The merch is everywhere. The merch is everywhere.
Flex.
Yeah, big thank you to Marshall, by the way, again for that. That's just awesome. But yeah, so it's interesting how many fans of bands that you like, you find out they've only been fans for a short while. And when you look at a band like Band-Maid, it's so hard to catch up with the previous discography, especially with all of like you got like mini albums now are a big thing. You got songs that only appear on singles. So I think a best of is a good way of bringing that all together.
Here's a question for you though. Like, how soon should a band do it? Like a best of? Like, I know, but obviously, I know this is celebrating 10 years. Does that feel like too soon to you a little bit, or does it feel just right?
That's a really good point, because there always used to be that thing. I remember it was like going back years. It was like the classic stereotype that if you release a best of, it's kind of like admitting that your career's over. It's like, we jumped the shark, time for a best of. But I think that's changed a bit. I think as we look at the way people consume albums now, and with the increased demand for single releases and EPs and mini albums and stuff, I think the best of now has a bit more of a use. Ironically, you'd think of it as a very old-fashioned thing, but in a way it kind of has a bit more of a use, because like I said, it's collecting together all the old stuff. So I wonder whether, I think partly you've got to have maybe enough material that it's hard for everyone to buy it, or separated amongst enough things like singles like that don't appear on the albums and mini albums. Basically, if it's hard for people to get hold of your entire catalog, that might be a good time.
Yeah.
And also, if you do think your career's hit a bit of a peak, maybe you suddenly gained a lot of new fans, or maybe you think you're reaching kind of the best of your career. Like, for example, I mean, if we were looking at another band who've been around for a long time, who I don't think should release a best of, would ironically be Baby Metal.
Yeah.
I don't think it's really a good time. I think you could easily make the case for they've only got 4 albums, go out and buy them.
Well, this is what I don't think
there's any big songs that don't appear on them. No.
Yeah, this is another thing I was going to touch on as well. I mean, in the case of Baby Metal, although you might look at it and think maybe 10 years is a little bit early, because I feel like for the vast majority of that 10 years, probably the first 4 years, they were relatively sort of unknown. I feel like they've come into like major popularity probably the latter part of the five years, to be honest.
Really? With I think they've expanded.
No, with Band-Maid.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So
yeah, I mean, their career is certainly going on like an
yeah, like
exponential growth trajectory.
on a trajectory. So I was kind of surprised, when, to be honest, when this was announced. I was kind of like, really? But what makes sense for me more, because I can't justify that in my head. Again, 10 years just seems a little bit too soon. But what I can justify is, unlike Baby Metal, where Baby Metal are pretty still too young for a best of, Jesus Christ. And but also the amount Band-Maid put out, they seriously like kind of made it's just like boom, 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 boom,
But
boom,
I
boom,
think
boom.
I think as well, because like Baby Metal, they shot to fame so quickly that I think that as a result, most people, and they became quite known. I mean, I wouldn't say they're a household name, but I think if you're into that kind of music, they pretty much are as near to a household name as you can be. I think most people knew if they were going to be into them, they would have already started buying albums by now or paid attention. As like I say, the exponential growth of Band-Maid is very different. I think the big thing as well, because like I say, when you've got a group of producing that much material that quickly, the question is where do you start if you're one of those myriad of new fans? And of course, the problem is if you, much love to the fan community, but if you go and ask any of the fans, they're going to be like, well, you should definitely listen to this song that doesn't appear on any of the albums. So they're like, oh, my favorite track is this little known, like track 10 from this album that came out 7 years ago. And, you know, it's always going to be because in the same way that like, if you speak to like someone who's a big fan of a band, usually the first thing they'll give you is to a live recording. And I've spoken about this many times before, so I get why they want you to listen to a live recording. But the problem is that they already know what it's a live version of. So they hear it as an expansion upon the original release. Whereas to someone who doesn't know, they're just kind of hearing a live recording and they don't have that context. So a lot of the time, you know, you're looking at a new fan, they're going to want to hear songs like Choose Me, which, you know, you might think that's fairly simple, but that's the sort of song that's going to bring them in because they're going to be like, okay, I have the groundwork. Now you give me more. And this is why I think the volume 1, volume 2 thing they've gone for, although it sounds like a cash in, is actually a really good idea because volume 1 is those kind of songs. Listen to it, it's pretty easy. Volume 2 is like, okay, these are the ones that people who already like the band are really kind of into. So these are the ones that are going to take you that extra step. By the way, I'm not being burgled. Just in case anyone who didn't see our last video is wondering, my friend is staying over today and he is coming and going. Suspiciously, he has taken my wallet and several expensive items. I don't have expensive items.
I was going to say, what's he going to rob?
Just like the computer disappears. It's like, shit, that's the only thing I've got. Yeah.
So,
yeah,
but,
I think.
Oh, so go on, man. We're both starting. Well, you go first.
So I think there is, when you're a fan of a band already, you're way too eager to talk to a new person and take them right to the limits of the things that make you love the band. But the truth is that half the time that's not going to mean anything because they haven't been through the journey that you've been through as a fan. They haven't got to know the sound, you know, see it all sort of grow. And therefore you've got to start with the basics. And so I think that's actually the use of this kind of format of album.
Is there anything on the Baby Metal, not Baby Metal, the Band-Maid best of that you that is missing for you particularly?
That's a really good question. Now, I am actually going to say I would put that one. I saw a few people already comment about this last time this came up in one of my videos. I'm going to really ask anyone at home who's watching this, definitely comment and say what you think is missing. Now, from my standpoint, I didn't approach the playlist that way. I just looked at the playlist more interested in, I was thinking, what's this going to sound like to someone who's maybe they were there on the US tour or they saw them and they were like, oh, I'm going to get into this band, I'm going to buy this best of. To me, I didn't really notice so much that there was anything missing. I just looked through it and I was like, that's a really good playlist.
It's a solid, no matter which way you look at it, even volume 2, like both of them are solid.
But you notice how volume 2 goes into a very different direction. I mean, you have songs like Screaming, which is not really a single, but people really like that song. You know, it was not a single, kind of is. It's on that double A side thing with Start Over. That was, it was Start Over was supposed to be the single, but everyone liked Screaming. And but anyway, and so they kind of made it look like that was the idea all along. No, we knew you like that one. Yeah, for me, it was, I didn't notice, I'm sure someone's going to say something, but I didn't notice anything that I thought was missing from volume 1, which in my opinion is significantly more important.
Yeah.
Volume 2, yeah, that's much more subjective because, as I said, that's the one where I think it's like them saying, look, here are the fan favorites. And so that's where you could get into much more dicey territory. See what I did there? You see what much more dicey territory, bam, with maybe they can go back and start over with this project. No, just ruined the joke. I know. I thought volume 2 is always going to be much more difficult. But I think if someone likes volume 1 and then they like volume 2, they're already at that stage where now you can have that conversation where it's oh now please listen to this version of Puzzle that was performed in this particular and you're gonna take them to a different place then because they're already on board. Yeah. So but I mean, do you know any other bands who've done? I mean, Love Bites obviously are like they've been like producing material hand over fist. I actually don't know. Have they had any compilations? I don't think they have.
No,
they?
I don't think they have. Again, I think Love
they've
Bites,
had the live stuff. I think that's
they've had the live stuff and all that. But I wouldn't say that's a best of or anything like that. To be fair,
I think if they released like a best of, you might need to like buy yourself like a neck brace or something.
I don't think they'll release a best of for at least another 2-3 albums. You could definitely make the case for them, but I think with Fami joining, I think they'll get more songs under their belt first.
Like the mini albums, like when we were talking about their discography, like in our video a few weeks ago, a lot of people commented and mentioned that we kind of missed a Glory to the World, which of course is just such a bizarre thing to miss because I still maintain that song. When I first heard that, I was just giggling all the way through. Like this is crazy, and it's so over the top in just the most beautiful, glorious way. So for me, I was kind of thinking. With exception to the fact that in the video, I still maintain the video very, very over the top, except for guy walking around who looks like a drunk hairdresser. I don't know what that bit was about, but other than him, really brilliant, over the top, crazy stuff. But yeah, that to me, that's kind of an exact example of the kind of thing I'm talking about, where if that song is not an easy one for a new fan to just pick up and find, that's when you start getting a good case for producing a best of. But you don't want to release a best of too early and you're kind of calling time in your own career.
I think in the case of Baby Metal, I definitely think it's too early. In the case of Love Bites, again, I think it's a case of way too early. Before they released the best of even for Band-Maid, I would make the case that it's a little bit too early. I would have given them another 5 years and then maybe thought about it.
I'd go back to your original point that they released so much though.
Yeah, they have released so much. And I think it's a good point because like you said, I think their popularity for Band-Maid is probably an all-time high right now. And I think spiking on that popularity growth and obviously with the US tours and all that as well, you can see what they're trying to do with it. It is definitely more of the label here pushing it out than I would say the band itself.
Do you think that since Fami's joined Love Bites, though, their popularity's their popularity was skyrocketing anyway, but then having that kind of we've just put a YouTuber in our lineup kind of thing. I mean, that was genius. Everything about that was genius.
Yeah, to be fair, Love Bites' popularity has been growing.
Because I often think I first listened to them back in 2019 when I first started my the channel back then. And I didn't really keep pace with them. I kind of let their career kind of go by, and I didn't realize how much they'd been doing. And then when I caught up with them, they had so much material. And I think a lot of the time I'm kind of thinking, well, where do I start? And like I said, when we did that video the other day, we completely forgot to mention like the record that features my favorite song by them. And I think they are one of those bands. If you got into them now, the question would be, where do I start?
Where do you start? Yeah. I mean, that's always the case with most bands. I mean, especially for metal bands, I think it's like more accepting to do like a best of, like you said, when they're a little bit older and a little bit wiser and stuff like that. It seems weird for me to be doing best ofs for like female rockers that are like in their early 30s. It's like that's crazy to me. Like,
I remember. Moving away from the Japanese side, just to give a quick example, because I think most of us, when we first heard this, was like growing up in Western environment. The two best ofs that, and I really want to get your comparative from your side on this. the two best ofs that I remember most of all. First of all, when I was really, really young, one of the first CD, because I didn't have a CD player growing up. We didn't have anything like that, a little AM radio. And it was when I was 15 and I decided to get out of my home. That's the first time I really had access to a CD player. And I remember, I think it was like the best of album by Blur. And I remember putting that on and just being blown away because I bought it for a couple of songs. I listened to it, I was like, I know all of these songs. I had no idea this was the same band. Holy shit. It was like Park Life and Song 2 are by the same band.
I know, right?
I was like just going through all of it, like blowing my mind. And then later on, there was also the best of by Feeder. Now I knew every song that was on there already, but that was them. They hit that right at the right moment because after that, their career kind of went But they hit that right at the point when they were like nailing singles every 5 seconds.
Yeah, I think one that I remember growing up prominently was Red Hot Chili Peppers. Yeah, like they had a lot of their early stuff on that album as well. And I was like, holy crap, this was Red Hot Chili Peppers, as well as the as well as like some of the later stuff as well. Just an all-around great, best of album, that one. That was a few years ago as well, and they've released some bangers as well since then. So I imagine, I don't know if there's a second one, probably is, but if there is, I imagine there's a few more hits on there.
They always come back for a second one.
I know. Without going into like again rehash territory, Metallica is always one that gets brought up quite a lot. Megadeth. I'm thinking like proper metal bands, but again, this is why like best of always seems a bit weird to me because like these bands have been around for like 40 years. And I think when I think of a best of, I think of like again, Red Hot Chili Peppers been around like 20 odd years now, 20, 30 years. Metallica 40 odd, Megadeth 40 odd. They've been around since the freaking 80s, all of them. So like when I think of like best ofs, I kind of like my mind kind of gravitates towards that one. So when the Band-Maid did come out with again this best of, I was like, really? That was my first thought. My initial reaction was, really? This seems like way too early. But then again, like you said, it's for the 10-year anniversary, and they do have such a massive backlog in a short time. I suppose strategically, if you're the label and you're pushing to promote them, which with their popularity going up and up and up and up right now, it's a smart move. I think it makes sense, and I think it's a great way to bring new people in.
I think you've raised an interesting point there, though, which is that partly it's how prolific these Japanese bands are. I mean, it suddenly occurred to me when you said that. I mean, if we look at Band-Maid themselves, I mean, take away, ignore the singles, ignore the EPs, and we still got Unseen World. Yeah. We've got Conqueror before that, World Domination before that, which of course that's the album that always kind of gets everyone, which is kind of funny because there was a lot of singles on that one, a lot of really notable singles on that. Then before that, so they had like 4 whole completely self-written albums. Then they had the albums where they were taking over the reins prior to that. Then you had the EPs. They've got a huge body of work for a band who's been around for 10 years.
For 10 years, yeah.
You look at the other bands we were talking about, and like the Western bands, they were probably releasing best ofs after 4 or 5 albums with no EPs or anything like that.
No. I think albums are a lot longer though for the Western. And like Band-Maid, it feels like I every time I review a Band-Maid album, it feels like I just finished and like a couple of months later there's a new one.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's what I mean. They're more prolific.
They're more prolific, yeah.
So
when I think of Western
to get enough material to necessitate such a thing.
When I think of Western bands, I think of like they drop an album and then like maybe 3, maybe 4 years later, after they've toured and stuff like that, then you look at another album. And then with Band-Maid, it's just boom, 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 boom. Yeah. And I think the good thing
they keep on changing fucking record label. That's the reason. So a new record label is like, well, we're going to need something to sell. Make a new one.
So maybe it's just because I've grown up, like I said, with like that Western thing in my head, where like if I was to go and say like what would a Japanese band like a best of it, like if I thought off the top of my head, I'd say something like straight away like something like X Japan, because they've been around for freaking
That's a really good example.
Forever.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of bands that come into my head when I think best of, like those kind of bands. So yeah, I feel like for the Band-Maid one, I feel like it's way too early, but it's what they've got on their side is, like you said, they've just done so much in 10 years. That's just hard to keep up with it all.
I think it was kind of obvious after like I said, World Domination. After that, it was kind of like, okay, they're clearly going to start putting out some pretty notable singles, and then it seemed like every album after that was like, yeah, they're, even though they're not like the traditional single writing band, I've always said that they never really focus on catchy songs. They've got catchier songs, but it's just not their thing.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of really interesting to me just how many noteworthy and different singles they had, and I think again that's another thing. If you keep on producing singles that are noteworthy and different, then again that's going to speed up the amount of time. It's going to speed up the process of getting to that point where you're going to have to say, well, look, new fans are going to need something to hold this all together. So I guess if you're following the Western model, maybe you're not such a creative band, or your singles sound roughly the same. Maybe you put out a new album every 3 or 4 years. Maybe everything you do is on a nicely contained album. You could probably go like 2 or 3 decades without needing to do this, because people are going to be able to recap your career real easy. So if you're eclectic, fast moving, releasing songs very prolifically, I think you can use that as an adverb, then you're going to end up with a situation where, you're going to be 10 years into your career and people are going to go, please God, put this all in one place. I can't fucking find half these songs.
To be fair, imagine Band-Maid in another 10 years. How many fucking songs are we gonna have?
I'm going to be a very happy grey man. Grey on the beard, because there's nothing up here to go grey. A very happy grey man.
The great ear hair that I'll probably have by then.
It's like, let me think, twiddling your ear.
But yeah, it's insane. I think
conversation again.
I think it's what I said. I think it's. I know. You got a habit of doing that. Like we trail off and then you put something in. I'm like, I'm just like train of 4.
Think about it and comb your nasal hair.
I know, right?
Oh God.
Yeah, 10 years. There is a part of me that thinks that they probably shot the gun a little bit too early on it. But do I think it's justified? And can I argue against it? No, I don't. For me, if I was going to go like a few tracks that were missing, the ones that come to mind, and probably the most obvious one for me is Don't Let Me Down. And I was really, really surprised that wasn't on there. In a more
Don't Let Me Down is that's a difficult this is a topic all of its own. Apart from the fact that they obviously don't want to lean too much into the point where other people were writing their songs for them. There's also the lyrics.
The lyrics is what make that song great, though, just because it is so fucking cheesy. I love it.
It's kind of like for a band it's like I don't know if that's necessarily the image
I mean, as soon as English, as soon as the song starts with "You Make Me So Wet," you know you're in for a ride.
Yeah, the
good kind.
I think you're proving why that's not on there. It's like they don't want that kind of fact.
Love that song. And for me, like being less subjective.
I wonder if they understood that. I hope they understood that when they read it and just went, "Okay, I guess we'll do this then." And then, that song is crazy catchy, though. It is really.
So I was pretty surprised with that one. Apart from like the lyrics, I never really thought the lyrics in that way. I just thought it was just a cool song. To be honest, look at Howard being the super dirty one.
I was about to say, like, if Bish did that song, then I would understand it. It's like, oh, Bish, you like to talk about this kind of stuff. If anything would be too clean for Bish, Bish would be like, wait a second, there's no body parts in this.
You saucy ladies. And
the words I learned from that.
What I would have liked on the best of, again, this is purely subjective for me, is the instrumentals, like on set, and stuff like that. They're not on there, and I know this probably that would divide opinion because a lot of people will be like, oh, it's got no vocals on it. But I would have just liked the volume 2 and then like the little mini section with like the 4 instrumental tracks just at the end.
I think you've got a fair point. Maybe not all 4 of them, but at least one of them. I mean, let's face it, they have got some of the non-Psyche Miku-led songs. So there's no reason. I mean, it's not like they go, "I know we got to have like the full band lineup on all of them." So there's no reason why they couldn't have stuck an instrumental on there. I think maybe that would maybe just be going too far, having an instrumental on a best of album.
Should we talk about why there's no Band Mako on that album as well?
Band Maiko is not the same band. I don't know what you're talking about. It's a different band. I know the Band-Maid are massive Band Maiko fans, but I mean, you know, it would be wrong to get another entirely different band and put them on their best of album. You know, so to be honest, I just think they just couldn't afford Band Maiko, because Band Maiko here have very high prices. This is why they don't play live anymore. None of the major festivals can afford them. Yeah, so I think that's the primary reason. That no, you can't just have other bands on your best of. That'd be terrible. Don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. Honestly, it's just a travesty. It's all like you're suggesting. Yeah, I think Band-Maid can do their own best of.
I love if there's a lot of people like don't understand that. Like, huh? What are they talking about?
They're the kind of people who need a best of.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of looking forward to it. Volume 1 and Volume 2. I like the way that they've tacked that on. I like the way that they've done the cases, so you have to buy that both to make one picture.
I was talking about how the great selling point is that you could have Volume 1 without Volume 2, and you could choose how deep you wanted to go, and then they just we're gonna make sure that you buy Volume 2. I like how they did that.
Like my OCD kicks in. Well, now I need the complete picture. God damn it.
You can only buy Volume 1 if you want. You'll feel incomplete forever, but some people are like that.
I know. You'll feel incomplete. I like the way that they've done that. Like more.
It should just say on the spine of Volume 1, it should just say, "Don't let me down." All right, so there you go. Get in the comments, everyone. Tell us what your tell us any examples of best ofs that you actually think were worth buying, and were they any sort of good examples that you can think of? When do you think a band should release them? Is there a good time to do it? Do you think the Band-Maid picked a good time to do it? Is there any other bands? Do you think Love Bites should do it? I think that's a borderline case in my opinion, especially with their growing popularity and some songs that are not necessarily on full-length albums. Let us know what you think. We'll be looking forward to seeing them as always. I can see Neon's brain's working. Do you want to say something?
I'm just gonna say with the Love Bites one, I agree with it. I think they could do it. I think the timing of family is probably the reason they won't. I reckon they'll get a few more. They'll get another.
Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah,
maybe two with family in the band first before they that's
a really good point. Kind of like the Band-Maid thing, they couldn't exactly have a best until they'd written quite a few albums of their own. So, that's a good point. That's a good point.
You can't have like a best of album with like one family song.
Here's the best of us, and you're not on most of it.
And you're not on most of it. Yeah, exactly. That's just like a bit not on, is it? Isn't it?
Do you remember the good times, Fanny? Oh, you weren't there. That would be a bit harsh.
That would be very harsh. So
I now understand, and because we all love Family, and Family is the best. No,
Family is amazing, by the way. Yes, and like probably the greatest choice for
brilliant. And I always go back to, I keep on saying that photograph when she first joined the band, and the rest of them are looking cool, and she's just smiling. Love the fact that she's just like, I'm just here, I'm in the picture. Best band photograph ever. Anyway, brilliant.
Yeah, it was so good.
We'll leave it at that, I think.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm interested to read the comments for this one.
We will read your comments and respond appropriately. And until we hopefully see you next time, remember to
keep your ears
to
the ears.
Why in a German accent?
Auf Wiedersehen.